Thanks for downloading another segment from the Best of the Classic Metal Show. The Classic Metal Show is heard live on Saturdays from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com. And now here's another piece of Classic Metal Show history on the Best of the Classic Metal Show.
The Classic Metal Show.
It's the Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That brand new stuff from Paul Gilbert, a rockin' little number known simply as the Rhino. And here's a guy that, well known for being a guitar virtuoso in many, many different projects, the one and only Paul Gilbert. Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Sure, man. Well, Paul, you know, obviously, man, you are no stranger to putting out records with, I think you're at what, about 40 records that you've played on at this point?
That could be. It's a lot of them. And it's a wonderful job to have. Well, I think I've actually been doing it long enough where the first ones were vinyl, then cassette and CD, and pretty soon we'll be downloading them as well.
Sure.
It's always music.
Well, Paul, obviously the new record is an instrumental record called Silence Followed by a Deadly Roar. And
Deafening Roar.
What did I say? Dying? I stink.
Deadly.
Well, it is definitely deafening in the fact that it's, it's some of the more melodic type stuff. Listening through it, it almost harkens back to your stuff, Mr. Big era stuff, as far as it almost seems like the music that you wrote here has, a lot of melody and stuff, and really you could lay a vocal over it nicely and have a nice new band versus, a noodler project. Is that kind of how you see it?
Well, I do really like the melody, although I must admit I was terribly scared of it because I really did not want to be like a Kenny G of guitar. That was my fear. I grew up listening to rock bands with singers, and for the longest time I stubbornly stayed away from instrumental music, mainly because I just thought, I thought a lot of instrumental music had a little bit of that Kenny G-ness to it. And but finally I thought, I am a guitar player. I've been playing forever, so let's see what I can do with this style. And I've tried really hard to keep it with some keep some teeth in it and keep a lot of rock attitude. And on this one, I hopefully was able to combine that with some good melodies and still have it rock and still have it be hard edged. And that's what I tried to do. But I do like melodies. I grew up listening to pop music, the Beatles and Cheap Trick and bands like that. So I can't help myself. It's a part of me. It's
an interesting dynamic. I mean, I know you're familiar with all the quote-unquote, virtuoso-type guys that are out there, everybody from Eric Johnson to Satriani and Vai and everything. And, for most of those players, what they tend to do is, they'll do songs, but the songs end up just being kind of jams, where these are legitimate type songs on this one. I mean, these are definitely songs that you would expect. You sit there almost on songs like Norwegian Cowbell or I Cannot Tell a Lie. It really, you just sit there kind of waiting for you to grab a microphone and add something to it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny. Like some of the songs, I actually, I'd put the backing track together. I'd have an idea of the chords and the groove. And then I'd put the guitar down, and I'd get a microphone, and I'd just let the track roll over and over again, and I'd sort of hum along with it. And, I wouldn't be worried about words or anything. I'd just be singing melodies and singing phrases. And I'd do that for maybe a half an hour until I had something I liked. And then I'd record it just so I'd have it as a reference. Then I'd go pick up the guitar and go back and learn it on guitar. And I'd never done that before, and it was such a cool process because if you're a guitar player, you have this sort of bag of licks, and you have your vocabulary that you're always building. But it is sort of your comfort zone, and it's like a magnet. Whenever you come up with something new, it tends to be influenced by your previous knowledge of what you know. Whereas when I was writing with my voice, it was very intuitive and very straight from the heart, and there was nothing really pulling me anywhere except what my ear desired to hear. And so then when I would go back and learn these things on guitar, I would find that it would really challenge me. It wasn't something that I knew how to play already. It wasn't something from my existing vocabulary, and I had to expand my techniques, and I had to, forge into new guitar territory. So that was really a good challenge and a great the result of it was a great pleasure, because it was, listening to something that had come very naturally, and not just from guitar licks.
Is it harder to write this kind of music for just that reason than say some of the stuff that you wrote, like with Mr. Big, say anything off of Lean Into It, which is clearly, while all you guys instrumentally were, certainly recognized for your work in that band, clearly the songs were a little bit, I don't know, they were kind of standard in the fact of, here's the bridge, here's the chorus, refrain, back to chorus, you know what I mean? Where these, you really have an expansion of what you can do. Is it a different process or a harder process doing it this way now?
I think the only time when things get hard, or difficult, is when things aren't sounding good. Writing and playing music is really a joy when things are flowing and when you're digging the sound. As I've had more and more experience as a writer, I get more and more ways of getting me out of those holes. When I'll start sounding bad, or start writing music that I don't like. And really, the thing I was talking about before, where you just put down the guitar and hum whatever you feel or whatever you want to hear. In a way, you pretend you're the listener instead of the performer.
Okay.
And you just think, if I was in the audience, what would I want to hear? What would make me want to keep listening? And I've been doing that since the early days of Racer X. I remember I would just close my eyes and imagine I was in the audience, and imagine that the coolest band I could ever imagine was on stage, and then just think, what would I want them to play? What would blow my mind? And I still do that now, and just try to not just be the performer, but be the listener. And in a way, that's sort of the ultimate goal is when you are the performer, if you can practice enough and be comfortable enough with your instrument, where you don't have to concentrate. You can be a listener. Your fingers are just moving automatically, and you can just sit back just like you were a member of the audience and listen. And that's really where the magic happens.
Now, Paul, I want to throw a stereotype out there, and I want to see if you, as one of the more established, well-recognized guitarists, think that you fall into this stereotype, or if this stereotype is even true. The stereotype that I always hear is that you guys that are not just standard guitar players, you guys that, have the talent and the skill that far exceeds the average riff players, are the most picky of players, where you'll sit there and you'll analyze every note of every fret that you play. Is that a true statement or not?
That's pretty true. I think as a kid, I grew up listening to my parents' records, before I was old enough to start buying my own. And they had a great rock collection. They had Beatles and Stones and the Animals and the Who, but they also had a lot of classical music. And I think that trained my ears to sort of expect great technique and great virtuosity out of the instrument. Certainly any classical recording you hear is performed by really amazing, trained, dedicated musicians. Whereas, I just as much I would love to listen to, like, Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols.
Okay.
I totally love that record. I love the Ramones. I love that power. And at the same time, the musicians who played on that really display a comfort. What they're playing isn't complicated, but they're comfortable with it, and they're playing it, to me, as well as anyone could play it. But listening to more complex music like classical music and hearing it played really expertly with great virtuosity, certainly planted itself in my ears early on from having my parents' records being played all the time.
Now, Paul, I find it interesting too that you're now making music with your wife. Is everybody knows the old saying of can't live with you and work with you. How does that work out for you? That's a lot of time to be, especially for a creative person, to be taking influence from the person that they're living with. Do you see that or not at all?
Oh, it's nice to have a great musician around with a really good objective ear. I get lost really easily because I'll get 10 ideas that I have come up with, and I'm so close to it that I can't figure out which one is the good one. So a lot of times I'll just if anything, she's annoyed by me because it'd be like, Emmy, come in here, which one of these is good? But she's an amazing musician. I mean, she has perfect pitch. Has been playing piano since she was 3, and if anything, she sort of she sort of dumbs it down to play with me. You know, she's used to playing classical music, and rock tends to be simpler a lot of the time.
Somehow, I don't think what you're playing anybody's considering simple but yourself, man. Paul, obviously, you know, the big trend right now in the world of what we'll call classic rock or classic metal are all these bands getting back together and taking a run around. I mean, obviously, Rocklahoma has put a lot of bands into the mind frame to get themselves back together. I'm curious if you have had any thoughts or contact with either Mr. Big or the Racer X guys about possibly, you know, putting either project back together, either for, you know, a festival or shows, or, you know, just to see how it feels once again.
I mean, of course, at Racer X, we did some stuff more recently, like in the late '90s, and I think our last record might have been like 2002 or something like that.
Okay.
So we've done stuff pretty recently, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, those guys are my teenage friends. We had a band together when we were very young in the '80s, and it was fun to go back and do some classic metal again more recently. And with Mr. Big, I mean, I saw Billy very recently. I just played a solo for his new solo record, and let's see. But I don't know, Mr. Big. That was a lot more personal drama going on in that band.
Right.
And as much as it would be enjoyable to relive some of the music, I don't want to relive the drama.
Right.
So I might leave that as in the glorious past.
Well, speaking of the glorious past, I have to ask you, what influence did playing with the one and only legend of guitar, Billy Morris, have on your career?
Well, it's good you're a friend or know of Billy Morris.
I'm a very good friend of Billy's.
Excellent. Yeah, I did a tour of Japan, and I think I'm trying to think if we might have gone to Hong Kong too. But we did a tour a few years ago for one of my records, and Billy came along and did a great job, both as a guitar player and vocalist too, because he helped me with a lot of harmonies. So if you pick up the CD, what's it called, Beehive Live,
okay,
he's on that one, and there's also a DVD called 11,000 Notes that he's on. So he did an excellent job, and please say hello to Billy.
Absolutely, man. Well, the new record is called Silence Followed by a Deafening Roar. Paul, what am I missing that you want people to know about this one?
This one, well, it's my best record I've ever done in my whole life, and it was an insane experience making it, because I made it in a much shorter period of time than I comfortably would have liked. But I think having the short deadline just upped the whole energy level and made it into a sort of heroic battle against time, and I think some good passionate music came out of it because of that. And like you said, I think it's more melodic guitar playing than I've ever done before, but certainly balanced with a healthy serving of terrifying shred guitar.
Right.
And I just tried to keep it interesting. I mean, because honestly, I don't listen to much shred guitar music, so when I make it myself, I have to make it to my standard. I have to make it something that I'll want to listen to, even though really I'm a rock fan. When I listen to music, it's going to be Van Halen or Humble Pie or Led Zeppelin or sort of your more typical rock music. And so when I make my instrumental music, I've got to make it appealing to me first of all, and hopefully by doing that, it's not just a record for guitar players, but it's a record that anybody who likes interesting pounding rock music will dig.
Well, Paul, before I let you go, I have to ask you what is known as the traditional classic metal show question. We ask everybody, and we get a very wide array of answers, so you may or may not have a story as well. How has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced your career?
Lemmy. Let's see. Well, I remember listening to Motorhead when I was a teenager, and of course, I'm just visually he was amazing, because first of all, Motorhead had one of his he continues to have one of the best logos in the business.
Right.
And Lemmy just looked great. He had that microphone up really high, so he had to he was sort of I was going to say the heavy metal Bryan Adams, but I think Lemmy came first, so maybe Bryan Adams is the pop Lemmy.
Right.
And just had the great Rickenbacker, and I'd have to say, though, maybe the most significant Lemmy influence was that without Lemmy, there would be no Fast Eddie Clarke.
Okay.
And without Fast Eddie Clarke, there would be no Fastway. And I listened to that Fastway album about 1 million times, so indirectly, that's probably the biggest Lemmy influence.
Well, Paul, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track and maybe tell us a story about it. So you have something that you want us to play to end this?
Oh, let's see. I think I want you to play Mississippi Queen.
Okay.
By Mountain.
All right.
That is the very first heavy metal song that I ever heard in my life. And I totally dug it from the first time I heard it. It's such an amazing rhythm guitar riff and such amazing guitar solos. And the thing that, if you're a guitar player, that I want you to listen to in this song is that when Leslie West plays the solos, he stops in between each phrase. And very few guitar players do that nowadays, including myself. It's really everybody just has so much distortion that they can't stop, or the guitar just starts feeding back and howling. But Leslie West on this track has the perfect sound where he can actually stop and breathe, sonically breathe and phrase, and it's such cool soloing. And it's got the cowbell. So what else could you ever want than Mississippi Queen by Mountain?
Well, let's check it out right here. It is Mountain with Mississippi Queen right here on your Classic Metal Show.
Thanks for checking out the Best of the Classic Metal Show. You can tune into the Classic Metal Show live every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com.